great to have you guys here. This is the first time we're doing anything like this, the first speech contest training for the district. I must give apologies in terms of the time zones. We are going to work that out because in the end, I think we've been working with people who are an hour ahead, people who are 5 hours ahead, and in the case of our guest speaker, we week a day. So,
Yeah, Eddie.
yes, a full day. So as you all can appreciate, it started to get very blurry what times we were in. But as a note, it is going to be for the next 2 sessions, 6:30 p.m. Cayman time. And I specify Cayman time. That's the same time as Jamaica and I believe Haiti. But if you're based in the Eastern Caribbean, you are an hour ahead. In the case of the folks from the Dutch islands, Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, you are also an hour ahead. And if Elizabeth and Violet from the UK is able to join us for the next sessions, boy, you all gonna have one late night because it's gonna be around midnight for you. So bear that in mind. As I mentioned before, it's 3 sessions we're doing. The second session is February 19. And that one, we are going to have Mark Brown, the 1995 world champion, with us. And Mark has a special connection to the Caribbean because it's, for some of you, you would know he's originally from Jamaica. So lots of love to have Mark Brown with us. And I believe the last session then would be March the 5th, our grand finale, so we will save that as a surprise. But our guest speaker has been here. Some of you have been chatting with her already, and I'll do formal introductions later, but you all can wave if you haven't done so already to Louis. Everybody is on mute, and just so we know, we will allow for comments and questions throughout. You have your chat option. You can either send it to our host, which is the wonderful Fabiola, and that's under Toastmasters District 81, or you can send it directly to me, or you can just put it in the chat so everyone can see it. And between Fabiola and myself, we'll make sure that we feed in your comment or your questions. We're all on mute, so that's why it will be most important to do that, because I know some people, this is dinner time, etc., and you want to make sure that you could, sip your cup of tea. Well, and in my case, I will be sipping a cup of tea. So while we are doing this, it's going to be recorded. So Fabiola is recording this. There are a lot of Toastmasters who have been emailing us. In fact, Kenesha just jumped off to say she has our club meeting, but she'd love to see the recording. So we hope to share the recording with everybody. We were hoping to have French and Spanish translators. We did get that question. I don't see any of our Haitian Toastmasters signed in as yet. And I don't think I've seen any of our Spanish, but we are in consideration and talking about how best we will handle that in terms of those folks who might need it in French or Spanish. And then finally, special thanks to the district, because this idea was born in Chicago last year, August. I think we were having dinner after the semi-final round where I competed with Anita, our district director, and with Fabiola, who is our program quality director for the district 81, the Caribbean Toastmasters, yay. So we talked about the fact that we would like to see a champion coming, or at least somebody to break through to the finals of the World Champion of Public Speaking from the Caribbean District. So we talked about what would it take for us to break this. And one of the things is the continuation of information sharing and the prep that goes into our speech contest. Because to prepare for the World Championships, you actually have to start at club level and start thinking about what are the most important components of the speeches, whether it's your content or your delivery, and most importantly, the mental preparation, the psychology behind competing, because believe you me, as you will hear from our guest speaker, and I can tap into that, there's a psychology that goes on when you compete, and there are a lot of things you have to tell yourself. So I just want to say that we are in for a very, very exciting session. And I would love to thank the District 3O, our team at our district leadership, for supporting this idea, and our PR manager, Pierre, he hopefully might be able to join us from Haiti, who has been circulating all of the information. And then I have special thanks for our Toastmaster in Grand Cayman, Jeremy Walsh from the Civil Service Toastmasters Club, who actually created the flyer in keeping with the theme, because you would notice that we have a very special, weird theme. And I have a PowerPoint, and I'm going to be sharing that with you as we walk through it. So I see that we have Ingrid and Greg who have joined us, and I believe they're Cayman Toastmasters, so I'm glad to have them on board. Welcome. I hope that everybody has been doing the polls, and we also have a survey. So I want to break right here and just formally introduce the Program Quality Director for District 81, the fabulous, magnificent Fabiola. If you could just tell everybody what to expect with regards to the poll and the survey.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm also so excited and happy that we can host this, and also for our members in District 81, but also for others outside of the district. And very honored to have Vivek joining us with this. For the poll, what we are expecting that when you log in, you just fill in the poll. It will help us to get to know who all signed in. And at the end of the session, I will be sharing a link with a survey that we would like you also to fill in. It will be a Google form, but we will also send it through our Zoom contact list for all of you that did sign in. So with this, I would like to turn over to Anik.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And I will actually go to my screen. So I want to pull up our PowerPoint presentation. So if you all give me one quick second, I will make sure to grab that. Of course, the fun thing is that I've been learning how to work Zoom ever since we started this training. So you're going to have to excuse me as we navigate this. 1 second. All right, there we go. And we're right at the conclusion. I love it. Session's done. Thanks all for being here. But I did give you my caveat at the beginning. There we go. So we've done our welcome. So far, I know that we have Toastmasters from Aruba and from Bonaire, and of course from the UK and the Cayman Islands. And I know that our Madam Program Quality Director Fabiola will let me know as more people join us. As mentioned before, we had over 20, close to 29 people who signed up. So we know that this is an evening after work, so we'll give people time to join us. We also have done kind of our introductions, chatting generally, but from the poll, we'll learn a little bit more about you. I had the opportunity just now to introduce Fabiola, and once she's able to join us, we will have our district director, Anita. The next step is, of course, an overview on this training, what it's about, what is this very weird title that we have, the Speech Championship Goes to Stanley, what is that about? And of course, our guest speaker will have a session with us and talking about her experiences and some very important lessons learned in a contest speaking. And then, of course, a Q&A segment and wrap up. Anytime you have comments, put them in the chat, questions, put them in the chat so we make sure we address as much as possible before we start. So Stanley, first of all, put in the chat if any of you know who Stanley is, or if any of you have watched a Marvel movie. And for those of you who need a clue on Marvel movies, think, let's see, Guardians of the Galaxy, Black Panther, The Avengers, Iron Man, Ant-Man, Thor, Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man. If you have watched any of these or heard the name Stanley, put it in the chat. Let's see. There we go. Finley, you are so correct, creator of Marvel Comics. Violet, you definitely have to go watch some movies and do some Googling. And Greg absolutely knows them all. And Finley, welcome. Finley's from our Cayman Club. So as he stated before, Stan Lee is considered the co-creator of the Marvel Comics. And what is interesting about his story and what is interesting about all of the movies that have been recorded so far, he has a cameo in every single movie. Somewhere in that movie, you're going to see Stan Lee. It's almost his wink and a nod to the movie itself. And he has an interesting story. Marvel Comics has a fascinating story in terms of how they were relevant then in the age when the comics, paperback comics, didn't seem so important anymore, how they reinvented Marvel Comics to come up with a franchise that is worth millions and millions of dollars. And right now, if you're looking on your screen, that is a list of some of the movies that they have done. And I say some because the last one, Captain Marvel, by the way, who is a female character and one of the most powerful of all of the superheroes, is going to be released this year. If you all haven't watched them, take a look, even if it's at some of the snippets that you will find on YouTube, and get a sense of it, because the reason why I talk about Stan Lee and why he came to mind when I thought about this is because Marvel Comics is a fascinating instrument. And as I mentioned before, it's a colorful history. It is about reinvention, but Marvel knows what it is to create characters that draw you in. Even their villains are complex. You can't decide sometimes for their villains if you like them or don't like them. There are times you actually empathize with the villains, and their characters are all human. Superheroes, but there's a lot of human qualities. There's vulnerability to them, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I also like that they deal with serious themes. When you watch a Marvel movie, you start to see certain things that even play out in conspiracy theories. So the last Avengers movie, for those of you who watched it, you will notice it had to do with this whole idea of overpopulation of planets and how the villain decided that he was going to deal with overpopulation. And the reason I even use this as an example is it talks about conspiracy theories that exist in our society today, where people feel like there's certain diseases and things that happen to help thin out populations. And I'm going to leave it at that. But they talk about what it happens with relationships with families, what happens when we neglect children. All of these are serious themes, but they don't allow you to be mournful. They do it with a wink and a nod. They're very interesting in it, and the humor that they use, even in the most serious of moments, are so unexpected. And if you think about a speech formula, that's where the best come in. The humor is unexpected. You never know where it is. They take you on a ride, there's seriousness, and then there's a lot of fun in it. Marvel Comics and the movies are timeless, and any good speech is timeless. If you watch any of the World Championships speeches, and by the way, for those of you who don't know, there is a link, and I can share that with you at another time, that lists all of the World Championship speeches. And some of the links even allow you to get to the videos where you can watch those speeches. And what you'll realize is that they're timeless. A great speech is timeless. It also crosses all ages, races, nationalities. So the serious Marvel comic fans are true to the franchise because they still see truth in the movies. And for me, who's not into comics, I enjoy the movies. I honestly do, without having all the background of the heroes and the stories. So these are things that just cross all boundaries. And that's what an effective speech does. That's what a powerful storyteller does. And then finally, it's the inspiration of a people. A speech should motivate and captivate and inspire. What is it that you want them to do? And every single Marvel movie, if you think about it, perhaps I think the best example of inspiration, for those of you, if you would know when I say Wakanda Forever, anybody who's watched Black Panther would know that Black Panther was an inspiration for the Black community. I watched videos, I mean, months and months in advance of people preparing to go watch this movie. That is not even to talk about the buzz after they watch the movie. And now it's so funny. Some of the superheroes in that will tell you that when they go out in public, this is how people greet them. Wakanda forever, my brother. That's just how inspired they are. So Marvel Comics and the movies, any of you who have not watched them, please take a chance and watch one of them or two of them. And those of you who have watch them again, because the formula by which they do this is the formula that makes for great speech writing and storytelling. So our 3 sessions is how this is how we're going to break down the formula for the movies. Our first session, which is today, is called Some of Us Are Born Superheroes. And we're going to go into some more details. So it talks about the character and those of us who are actually giving the speeches. And I know there's some of you who are here who are not competing and who may not be planning to compete this year. You notice the caveat, I said this year, because I hope that when we're done, you will be competing next year. And Giandra, I see you laughing. Yes. But the whole idea is these are techniques every single one of us can use in our speeches, regardless of whether or not we are competing. So some of us are born superheroes. What does that mean? And then on the 19th of February, storytelling with a wink and a nod. So what does it mean to craft a powerful story? And we'll have, as I said earlier, Mark Brown, our world champion, with us from 1995, and then the grand finale on the 12th of March. And I want to talk a little bit more of that on the end of the session and then the 19th, because I want for some of you to think about testing material so that for the grand finale, we can actually talk through some of the material that you've tested. So, some of us are born superheroes. Some heroes are naturally gifted. If you look at the Marvel franchise and you look at all of the list of the superheroes, some of them are naturally gifted. They were born with talent. And that's what we say for some people who are fantastic storytellers. They just have this gift. Do you all have friends that they start telling you what they had for breakfast and it sounds like a blockbuster movie? Like you would pay money in the cinema to watch them just eat this breakfast? Some people have that gift. On the meantime, and there are others of us who could tell the story about breakfast and everybody would be like, okay, what's for lunch? That's how it goes. So there are superheroes that are naturally gifted. So Thor, if anybody watched Thor, you will realize he was gifted. Then some of us are accidental. In the case of the Hulk and Spider-Man, one got bit by a spider that was radioactive. The other one was playing with chemicals that he shouldn't have, and they were suddenly superheroes. Some people stumble onto this element of storytelling. There are others who need assistance. So Iron Man uses technology. Black Panther has this special flower. But there are people who need assistance to help them to get to their superpowers. And then there are others who have skill. They have this skill. So if you watch the Avengers, Black Widow is not the traditional superhero. She has no natural superpowers, but she can kick butt. And she can kick butt because she's skilled. So what do all of these have, whether they're natural storytellers, natural superheroes, people who are accidental, people who need their assistance in some way, shape, or form? What do these superheroes and these super storytellers have in common? Practice. If you watch the Marvel movies, you will recognize that these guys practiced everything. Iron Man, before he could suit up and fly up in the air, spent a lot of time knocking around in his garage, literally. You know, some of these guys, Hulk had to learn how to deal with his anger to contain his superpower. So all of these guys have to practice. And any great storyteller, anybody who's competing, will have to practice. And I can tell you, it's so funny. When I was listening to people at the semifinals in Chicago, we were practicing night and day, to the point where nobody really slept the night before the semifinal round. There were people who were like, yes, I was up 4 o'clock in my head with my speech. There's this thing that you're practicing. And I will never forget Mark Brown when one of the things he said to me is, Annie, I should be able to wake you up 2 o'clock in the morning and you should be able to give that speech. In other words, I put so much time and energy and practice into honing my skill. Now you have to be very careful, because the caveat is you're honing a skill that you're developing, that you want to come across as authentic and genuine, not honing a skill so you sound and look like anybody else. None of these superheroes sound and look like anybody but themselves, and any great storyteller looks and songs themselves, but they practice their skill. There's imperfection in the best. The best storytellers are those who are vulnerable, those who are able to connect with us because there's an element of humanity that comes out of them. All of those superheroes are conflicted, they're imperfect, whether personally or as a team. But ultimately, what is important to note is that they all recognize that they have a purpose that is bigger than themselves. And if you want to be a powerful storyteller and speech contestant, you have to recognize it's not about you. In a sense, it's all about the message you're giving that is bigger than yourself, something that you want other people to learn from, to share in, to talk about. So that is important for us to understand. And then finally, there's the psychology of battle. All of these superheroes has this battle they have to fight. And there's a level of mental preparation where they come down to it. This is what I meant to do. And I see a typo there, so I'll correct that for those who want it. This is what I meant to do. You have to mentally prepare yourself for telling your story, for competing, because you can write a great speech and you can practice it, but you have to get in your head what it is and what you want when you stand up on the stage. And it could be for anybody giving a speech. And if I were all of you, I would start practicing that. What is it that's bigger than me in my message? What is it that I want people to get out of it? And this is what I meant to do. So our superheroes, there's great correlation with storytellers and speech contestants. If you study what happens with them and study how Marvel creates their superheroes and tell their story, you realize there's a lot of good things here that you can learn as a competitor. So I want to talk about mental preparation for a couple of things. One, mental preparation might be as basic as choosing what you're going to speak about. It can also be, when you choose what you're going to speak about, how much are you going to share? Because sometimes the topics we're choosing are, again, they make us vulnerable. So we consider them in terms of, what is this? How does this make me feel? And will I get very emotional about this? So it's how much is enough, and that sometimes can be a struggle and part of your mental preparation, the psychology of preparation. You may have to think about delivery. How much is too much? How much is too little? What is enough to make sure you come across genuine? Finding humor in your speech and in your presentations. It could be the contest briefing sessions. It could be just, what does that sound like? I tell you, I was so nervous in Haiti. I was frantic in Haiti when I sat in the contest briefing, because that's where I saw my competitors for the first time. And, you're seeing and hearing them. And for those of you, if you make it to the world champions, because yes, we are, but there's also that psychology too. When you get to that level and you sit in a room and there are over 100 people and you realize you're competing with them, selecting your speaking order can be a psychological battle, because sometimes, people are like, I don't want to speak number one, and I don't want number to speak in number two, or I don't want to speak as the last speaker. That's the battle. And then finally, the day of the contest itself, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that sound like? So all of that is part of the psychology and the mental preparation. And when we start at club level, it gets easier, just a little bit easier when you move up to your area, to your district, and then to the championships. So you want to think of what it means to be mentally prepared. So I pause here, and I just want to check in. Everybody's with me. Any questions, any comments, please feel free to share. If not, we go into the meat of it all, a very special superhero. And it is with great pleasure that I get to introduce our guest speaker. Yay! Vivek caught my attention because at the contest, she walked with candy, a mint, and a little business card, and gave it to every single contestant. And I thought to myself, whoa, she is really special. So all of us were in the front row eating candy because we needed it during the semifinals. It was a long session. But she was also the person who connected quite a few of us on social media. And when, I went into the semifinal rounds with all intention to win that round. But I can safely say when we won it, I was as happy and proud of that moment for her as if it were for me, because I think she deserved it. Fabulous speech. And I love the fact that you were also first. You were the first woman from Singapore to win and represent Singapore at a world championship and become one of the top 10 speakers of the world in 2008. And Vivek, her family was there at the semifinal rounds to support. Love it. She's a homemaker, but she also, I've been tracking, well, I'll call it stalking, on Facebook, and she's been doing a lot of presentations and speaking engagements. And her mission is to inspire fellow mothers to speak out loud their messages of love, growth, and nurturing the future to everyone. So I love what she says. She aspires to inspire the hands that rock the cradle to truly rock the world. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor in our first session to welcome a fellow contestant, a world championship finalist, and an all-round superhero, Vivek. Vivek, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Hi. First of all, I do not like the feeling of talking to myself. So if it's possible, can all of you have yourself unmuted? I don't mind having you guys laugh, and it will be awesome to hear feedback.
Hello.
Okay?
Sure.
Hi, Finlay Joseph.
How are you?
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Yeah, I can hear people now. Hi. Unmute everyone. I'm gonna check on everyone. Okay, let me see. Greg Miller here, Angeline Trump. because while Anik was talking, we had a double in participants, so that's really awesome.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining in. Really
Hello.
nice to be talking to all of you. It's Wednesday morning right now. You see, this is not light. This is sunlight. So it's
Oh.
actually very, very bright. Yeah. Who's this? Wait, let me see.
Mhm.
There is one lady. I don't know her name. Yeah. Okie dokie. Thank you, Anik, for your sharing. It's surprisingly very informative. I didn't expect you to learn that much from Stan Lee. Are you sure you are not really a comic fan? Because you do sound like you're one big comic fan.
The movies, the movies.
The movies,
Yes.
okay. Never seen someone put in so much work and research into one person, and to come up with so much content which are so relevant to speech writing, and even the top 10 in the world this year learns a lot from that sharing just now. So that's really amazing. Thank you so much, Anik. Okay, I'm gonna follow Anik's sharing and share with you my experience and how I became some kind of superhero in this country, in Singapore. I actually started competing not because I wanted to compete. Not very inspiring. I competed because I had to fill in for my club. Like my club didn't have a representative for the competition, so they just said, "Okay, we go for it, gain exposure." See where it led me to. And at every time I won a level, I'm like, okay, great, I got first prize. It's not the first time I won something that's first. So, but I didn't expect it to advance to another level, My experience with contests is that if it ends with a first place, I go to a restaurant, eat, go home, sleep. That's it. There's no such thing as you need to prepare for another level. No. So who's that? Someone said something. Yeah. So it came as a big surprise that I had to write another speech or prepare a better speech for the next level. And at every time I asked my club mates, like, I only thought I'm going to represent you guys once because you needed someone to fill in the space. But why am I doing it more than once? And they're like, it's okay, just do it. We'll cross the bridge when we get there. And I'm like, okay. So I crossed the bridge eventually to an aero bridge, which led me into an airplane, flew me all the way to Chicago. So that was the kind of bridge that they were referring to. Yeah. So definitely in terms of superhero, I am one that is an accidental one. My participation in Toastmasters too is also very accidental. I started my journey in Toastmasters in 2014. And I was forced to join in by my husband. He was the one who paid for all my membership fees, even though I did not attend the meetings regularly. Why he did that for me is because sometime in 2013 and 2014, I stopped formal employment, to take care of my children. And since then, I thought it was just a stop of career, so I don't have a salary. I'll just focus in housework. But what I didn't expect was I suddenly found myself cut off from society, from my friends, from interaction with peers, and that took a toll on my uh, self confidence, my image. So I didn't get that kind of practice talking to people who think the same way as I do, or of the same age as me. The oldest that I speak to on a daily basis is a 5-year-old. So there's not much thinking there when you talk to a person that age. So that was what happened. My husband saw that I was a very different person because I didn't get that regular chat that apparently we all need as human beings. So that was why he signed me up for it. That was in 2014, but it took me 3 years to just rediscover my confidence and myself. Um, I also had to redefine who I am, because before this, I only defined myself as a person, as a professional. So Vivek is a counselor, and who I am is my whole job scope. So with that career being taken away from me, I suddenly don't know who I was, and that was really tough for me. So if you were to look back and reflect on the sharing that Anik gave you, that accidental journey of being a superhero, that there is a lot of growing into your role when you find your purpose there. So it took me 3 years to do it, just to get back my image, my identity. But since then, I realized that I'm not going to be the kind of speaker who, just speak for myself. And if you imagine all the public speakers that maybe you're familiar with, I want to be someone who advocates for a cause, a purpose. So I'm not really a public speaker in that sense. I'm more like an advocate for something. So when I got to the district level, I realized that I have this opportunity to spread that message and have people talk more about the group that I represent, which is homemakers. Because I don't know about your countries, but in Singapore, we take more care for domestic helpers. We talk about their welfare more than the welfare of homemakers, housewives. Maybe because domestic helpers come with salary, so they are still considered as professionals, even though the job scope of domestic helpers and housewives are the same. So maybe because of that, we don't take that much importance to housewives. And as a result, I observed that many housewives struggle alone. Whatever difficulties that they have, you can only hear screams behind closed doors. And I live in an estate that is very young. There are many young couples, and many of the mothers took this new route compared to the people in the past. So there are many new moms stopping work to take care of children, just like I do. But there is one thing that they don't expect, which is to feel very alone and cut off from the society, as I mentioned earlier. So I only hear screams daily from their struggles, and because they don't feel that they have the outlet to share their frustration. So that was my promise to myself when I got to a stage that big. I want to spread this message so that people will be able to just be more aware and talk more about the housewives, the people in their house, the hand that rock that cradle, and bring them out of the struggles. So that's what I did with my opportunity, and that is the message that I sent in my final message. It wasn't something as impactful as my semi-final speech, but it was more for a tribute to the mothers. So how many of you have watched my final speech? Just a show of hands or chat. Let's see. Yes, definitely.
I did. Yeah,
Yay.
live.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, quite a few saw live. I
Yeah.
think Greg and Ingrid saw it live. Greg and Ingrid
Yes.
saw it live. Yeah.
Where's
Mhm.
Ingrid? I can't see Ingrid.
Come on, Ingrid and Greg. Where are you guys? Oh, wait. They just turned off the video. They were there earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
Where's
Yeah.
Sylvia?
Oh, there's Ingrid.
Where the hey.
Hey.
Hi.
This is like a reunion for those of you who are wondering what's going on, because there was a Caribbean contingent who was there at the semifinals and then again to watch the World Championship. So this is kind of like a reunion right now for those who are there.
Yeah,
Sure.
I must thank Ingrid really, because I didn't expect someone who I don't know to hug me so affectionately in
Wow.
every time she met me, and it really gave a boost of confidence for me over there, because I mean I flew all the way from Singapore, and although I'm with my husband and my kid and maybe one other person who's not a competitor, and I don't know who he is, he just, hey, I'm here to support you. So I'm thankful for someone who just came and she gave a very warm hug. If you have not experienced Ingrid's hug, please find a way to meet her and make her hug you. It's really electrifying and I love it. Thank you so much, Ingrid. Yes.
Ingrid, imagine your hugs are worldwide. Look at that.
Yay!
But Vivek,
Yes, yes.
could I want to, I know this isn't something we talked about, but every time you and I chat, I hear something that makes me go, wow. And guys, bear with me this one.
Okay.
You said something very, very important. You said you appreciated the boost of confidence you got when Ingrid gave you a hug. And the reason I'm pausing there, and Fabiola might remember this discussion. Last year, I had an opportunity to share with some of the district Toastmasters my journey. And one of the questions that I actually got was this matter of what do people say and do to competitors when they've done competing? And there was this whole thing about, especially at club level, area level, district level, and I need everybody to hear this. Be very careful how you approach competitors, because there was this whole discussion of people who go, you made a mistake. That actually happened to me at district level. I knew I had made a mistake, but there've been people who've been told, you know, you could have done better and so on. And sometimes it's we say that to competitors we know, or we say certain things that are very trite to competitors. And when we go back to the psychology of contest, you are so emotionally drained. Sometimes afterwards, you're like a zombie. The only thing you want to do is lie down in your bed and just zone out to some mindless TV or music or something. You don't even want to have a logical conversation.
Oh, yeah,
And so for you, especially knowing you had a small contingent of support, a hug made such a difference.
Yes, it did. And I can tell you why. Because when I checked into the hotel, I went in a lot earlier, actually. I think a week earlier than the contest. And I was greeted by a huge group of people. I mean, all scattered around the lobby, and they're all talking to the wall. So these people are actually the competitors, the contestants. And I was having my baby sleeping in my arms, and I'm like, oh God, what is happening? Isn't the contest a week from now? What are you guys doing? And they're all talking to themselves, practicing. Some of them with bigger groups will just like, you know, in having mini practices. And those who are not competing or those who are not practicing, they have these phones and they're like subtly just recording other people while looking somewhere else. And I witnessed that. I'm like, if that is happening and they find out that I'm a contestant, I don't want to have that kind of limelight. So I quietly moved in and they're like, oh yes, checking in for Toastmasters. Like, shh, tell no one I'm from Toastmasters.
Very good.
So and it was, I'm lucky because I remain low profile for the bulk of my time. In fact, even in district, nobody knew who I was right until the time I went to district. Everybody know who my husband was though. He joined Toastmasters way before me, more than 10 years ago. So everybody know who my husband is, but they don't know who I was. And when I came to a level that is of district level, they were wondering who is this person. Like in Singapore, they call me auntie because I dress like one. So they're like, who is this? So when I presented my speech, they were really surprised because they didn't expect a person who looked like this to present herself that way. So that was one thing that was unexpected, and I think it worked to my benefit then. And I think the same thing happened in Chicago, and I only found out about that when I won. After I won, people started approaching me, and the first thing they said is, "Oh, we didn't expect something like that to come from a person like you." And I'm like, okay.
What does that mean? Yeah.
I don't know. Let's not go do too deep into
No.
yeah. So like, okay, but regardless, I mean, everybody will have their first impression of you. And in a book that I read, I forgot the title, it's somewhere in my room. It did mention that your first 10 seconds of interacting with anybody determines how they judge you. So if for all of you who are competing, if you want to pay attention to anything at all in your speech, pay attention to the first 10 seconds of it. How you present yourself in a speech, how you come onto the stage, that alone will determine your fate for the rest of it. If you later on pick up pace and get more momentum, be more familiar, people will not really be too welcoming to your positive changes, even though they are positive changes in your speech. So first 10 seconds will really seal the deal for you. And if you, I'm going to be brutally honest for myself and for you, because I think it's best learning for all of us as well. If you were to check my speech, the semi-final speech and the final speech, that semi-final speech, you were to see how I presented myself in the first 10 seconds. And in the final speech, how I presented myself in the first 10 seconds, you can see the stark difference. And that also determines the change and the results for me. And I believe that was the reason why. And this brings me to the next part about better preparation. The difference between the semi-final speech and my final speech. My final speech was not as impressive, and I believe it is because the first speaker, Sherry Sue, came and nailed it from the start. We usually do not expect a very strong first speaker. And even when we were in that room taking out the ballots and, all the numbers, when she drew number 1, she was the first one to draw, and she got number 1. Wow. So we're like, oh my God, that's like double, you're the first one to draw and you got number 1. So everybody like, okay, that's it. Sherry Sue, sorry, this year is not your year.
Little did we know.
Little did we know, exactly. Yeah, and she had that look on her face as well. She gave that look like, oh my God, I'm number 1. But I think after that, she got over it and she just gave her all. And what happened after that was people from number 2 onwards started chasing after her. So that is the beauty of not caring about which position you're at. Even if you get number 10 or number 1, it really doesn't matter. Just focus on your speech and just nailing it. You will do extremely well, whichever level you are. If you are the first one, then you'll get the effect that Sherry Sue got, which is you make everyone run after you. So that was what happened to me then, because in the semifinals, I was confident. I got a big number. I got number 7. So people went upstage and down a few times, and I'm like, okay, I can calm down. I got panic for a while, and then I come down again, panic, and then come down again. I got enough time to go through that cycles a few times. But being speaker number 4 in the finals and having nothing to tune myself out and focus just on keeping my nerves down before stepping up on stage, that was the the one that sealed my fate then. Because I remember when I was at the backstage, because the first 4 speakers had to be backstage to be mic'd up before everyone else. So I was speaker number 4. I had to be back. And I thought, okay, this is an advantage. I don't have to be at the front watching everyone. So I was at the backstage. What I didn't know was at the backstage, the volume is louder than anywhere else. So when people were laughing and Sherry Sue was nailing all her lines, I was hearing it firsthand, and it was so loud. And I wished I brought my mufflers or anything to just block that sound out. So that's one thing that you can also help yourself. I mean, in the semifinals, Anik can also attest to that. There are a few contestants who brought mufflers just to tune out all that sound, because everybody manage their anxieties differently. So some were really loud just before the contest. You can see them really talking a lot. It's not really that they're talkative, they're just really on adrenaline. So there are others who are dead silent and I don't want to talk to anyone. So it really depends on what kind of person you are and how you manage your anxiety. But I would love to have a muffler then, because I never thought that I would need that at any point of time. But at that point of time, it got too loud that I wished a muffler would be present for me. So that would be something that I would change maybe in the future. I'll bring everything, a bag full of all the resources so that I can be better prepared for a stage like that. Because one thing that wasn't shared as part of my preparation, the past champions did mention that it's going to be very tough. I can't find a better word. The preparation is going to be really tough, and over there it's going to be intense. I never expected it to be that intense. In fact, a few minutes before the start of the contest, I was on the phone with Darren Tay, 2016 champion from Singapore. He mentioned, don't worry, Vivek, champions eat nerves for breakfast. And I'm like, you have to be more helpful than that. I just had my breakfast and it was not nerves. And I'm like, if I don't have nerves for breakfast, does that mean I am not a champion? So he was trying to be helpful, but it's not something that you can get over with just a few lines like that from people. And there were a few other people who told me to calm down, but really it's a lot of mental and a lot of tuning out many naysayers, your own negative thoughts. You have to tune out yourself as well at that point of time. So work on that from the start, because if you think you're gonna be able to practice that and have that in your bag only at the finals, you'll be very surprised that you'll suddenly forget how to do all these things. So
sorry, Vivek, I think that you know what, that is actually some fantastic points that you shared with everybody. And again, folks, please feel free to share your comments and questions as well as we are going through this, because this is definitely, when you talk about the psychology, because for me personally, I got number 4 at district level, and then I got number 4 as my number at the semifinals. And so for me, I was like, oh, number 4, this is a good number from district. So I'm going to run with this. But to your point, you never know what you can do. The number is irrelevant. And if you let that psych you out. And then at district level, for those of you who are going on to district level, one thing I observed last year was that someone actually chose to leave the room before in terms of the competition. Now, that is a decision ultimately you'll have to make in accordance to the rules, etc. Some people would prefer to be there to gauge the audience's reaction, so you really know what you need to do. But you also, to Vivek's point, you need to find some way to block out the sound. And you need
Mm.
to find some way to calm yourself if you choose to be in the room. And I'm not sure you have a choice at World Champions. So it's learning how to focus and muffle sound in the room.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, muffling of sound is really important. There's something that I learned while I'm there. And we did ask the organizers if we are able to leave the room. I mean, at the backstage, there is a door just that leads us out of there. So it's okay. But they mentioned you can leave, but you have to enter when, at your own time. We're not going to look for you. So, okay.
Mhm.
What if we get locked outside, those kind of things. So okay, we
Yes.
thought it's safer for us to just stay indoors.
Mhm.
And plus, the place at the backstage is huge, so you can find your own spot, but the sound is loud throughout. So just prepare yourself with some kind of earphones, headphones to tune yourself out. That you need that kind of silence before you go on the world stage, because
Mhm.
ultimately, when you go on the world stage, it's not really to present an impressive speech. If
Mhm.
you look at the sharing that Anik gave just now, and you go deep into the idea of being a superhero and having something that's bigger than yourself, ultimately you would want to go there with a message that is worth sharing to the world, something that's generalized and that can uplift the lives of the people listening to it. So having time to really focus on that message and preparing yourself so that you can deliver that message as impactful as possible to the world stage when it's your turn would really, really help. So,
Ricky,
There's,
hello.
yes,
there's,
who's that?
there's
Hi.
one
Hi.
question. Oh,
Sorry.
Finley, you have one? Let
Yeah.
me just read one also in the chat box, and then you can ask yours. The one from Elizabeth is, did you have a coach or mentor, and how far in advance? And then Finley, when you're ready.
Okie dokie. I do have a coach. And I only engaged that coach when I cleared the district. That means while I'm preparing for my semifinals, and I chose my coach based on the context. I didn't choose my coach because he's great or anything. I chose him because he lived in Chicago. His name is Presian Vasilev. He is the champion in 2013. If you remember a
Mhm.
speech called Changed by Attire,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
him.
All
So
right.
yeah, so he was my coach, and why I chose him was because for the 2 years before I started representing my country, the champions, uh, Manoj and Darren, flew to their competition country a month ahead, and they practiced their speeches in that country.
Mm.
So they were able to fine tune their speech that to fit the likes and the preferences of the people living there. Because one thing that you need to also know is while Toastmasters is an international organization, um, the bulk of the audience at the world stage will come from the host country. Economical reasons, it's cheaper that way. So that was why I chose Presian, because he lived in Chicago. That's one. The other reason is because he's also an immigrant. He's from Bulgaria, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm. Yes.
So he's more in tune with how to internationalize your speech.
Mhm.
While I was preparing my speech, there were many times he helped me with choosing better words that people understand. When I said he was in charge of the trash, and I was talking about my husband, right? And how he doesn't throw the trash. I didn't use the word trash before in at district level. In Singapore, we call it rubbish. So he is those things that made my speech more relatable or easier to relate to for the international stage, because if I use rubbish, for some parts of the world or the people, they will spend some time having to process and translate that to trash before they continue following me with my speech. So if I have things like that, and the listeners have to spend a lot of time constantly at every part of my speech to translate it to a term that they normally use, what will happen is they will feel like they are lost in my speech, and it's really hard for them to follow through my message, making my speech not as impactful as I want it to be. So that is how having a coach that is able to help you internationalize your speech is very helpful for your speech preparation. So that is how far in advance that is. Before I engage Presian, my practices are mainly with my club. And we actually call it a boot camp, and it happened accidentally. Um, in March, a day before my area contest, a day before my area contest, there were a few contestants in my club, and we're all in different parts of Singapore, and we're all very nervous. So my husband had this idea, like, why are we all nervous and like nervous on our own? We are, after all, a club. So let's all gather somewhere and give ourselves that boost of encouragement, support each other. So we did that, and that was how boot camp started. My club is Jauhari, so we call it Jauhari Boot Camp. And what happened was we just practiced and have feedback for a few times and sleep. The next day we went out to compete, and turns out that boot camp was so effective. Just the fact that we are giving encouragement to each other, giving live feedback just a day before the contest, that was so effective because every contestant from Jauhari who competed the next day came back with a trophy. Different colors though. I got the gold one.
Hi, Vivek. Can I
Right.
tell you that
Yeah.
story gives me chills? And before Finley asks his questions, I need to. The reason I'm getting chills, guys, is because there's a lot of correlation. She was in Singapore and I'm in the Caribbean, and I want you all to hear the similarities. One, my speech coach, my told me the same thing about the language and the way in which I put my speech. And for us in the Caribbean, we need to understand this context. This is very, very important. We like certain terms in the Caribbean, and everybody in the Caribbean, or most of us in the Caribbean, will understand it, but not an international audience. So first thing, for all of you writing speeches, write as if there was somebody from Dubai, somebody from Nigeria, and somebody from Singapore in the audience who may not get half of your references, because that is your first battle. You have to choose appropriate language. And that was something that my coach also shared with me, because he watched the speech I did at District, and he said, there's a term you use, and he said, I guess everybody got it in the Caribbean. He says, when you go on international, you're going to have to switch that up. So I love that you share that, because I also got a coach as soon as I was finished the District competition. And guys, Mark Brown. And Mark was great. He came through Ingrid, because Ingrid has connections. Thank you, Ingrid.
Okay.
But I like it because Mark understood the Caribbean. He's Jamaican. He's originally from Jamaica, and he understands the Caribbean context. So there's things that he would get even in how we pronounce some of our words, because again, in the Caribbean context, sometimes we forget our THs, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes we speak very quickly in the Caribbean. We don't realize our rate of speech may be too fast for a Caribbean audience. So for all of you who are looking at your speeches, regardless of whether you're competing or not, from now on, talk as if you're talking from an international audience. Yes, you can include local references, and you can have in, local terms, etc. But from the point of competition, start thinking about the fact that your references have to be international. So thanks. I thought that was beautiful. Ooh, yeah, man.
Thank you.
Yes, hi, Viveki. I do have a question. You said that the lady that won the competition that you were in, she nailed her speech. What exactly does nailing a speech mean to you?
Which one? Oh, Sherry Sue. Sherry
Yeah.
Sue got second place.
Okay.
Mhm.
Was that the
Yeah.
lady that drew first and drew number one?
Yeah. Sherry
Right.
drew number one and she got second place.
Right. So what
Yeah.
does nailing a speech mean to you?
At that point of time when I mentioned nailed and I perceive it as nailed it was because the reaction from the crowd was overwhelming. Who am I speaking to?
Finley.
Finley.
Finley. Yes.
Finley. Hi, Finley. Were
Huh.
you at the were you in Chicago?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. Over there, my coaches also mentioned the same thing. You need to write your speech in a way that you get the response from people. You need them to um, respond to you. And usually this response is a laughter or a raising of hands, those kind of things. So in Sherry's speech and final speech, there were many parts where she actively engaged the audience and they responded. And what happened when you are able to do that kind of exchange is you exchange vibes as well. The energy gets transferred back on stage and it helped you as a speaker present your speech even much better. And I can say that about the speech because in district level, I suddenly changed my speech to something that is more relatable. And I didn't test my speech before that because I found myself hitting a wall right until the night before the contest. I did a club practice somewhere and there was pin drop silence when I presented my speech at while preparing for district level. Really, all my humor lines did not work. Nothing worked. So imagine talking for 5 to 7 minutes to the wall.
Mm.
It doesn't make you feel very good at all. And you
Yeah.
also start to wonder if your message is that effective. And if you keep doing that all the time, you will affect your delivery as well.
Mm.
So if you are able to get response from the audience, it helps make sure that it helps you feel more assured that you have their attention. Which is also why the first thing I did was to ask all of you to unmute yourself so that I get response when I speak. Because it also helps me focus on my message when I want to present a speech. So when I did my district speech, I got that kind of response from them just within the first few seconds. And it really helped you as a speaker when you're on stage because imagine every response from them as a bridge, being built from that part of the stage to your side of the stage. So once you have this kind of bridge being built, whatever you say goes straight there. Without that bridge, you can imagine just your words just falling through. Nothing. It will just stay on the stage. It will not go to the audience. So that was how I imagine a reaction is. Many people say not having humorous, must a winning speech be funny? It does not have to be funny. Like Ramona's speech, it's not very funny. I mean, there are many people who did reviews of the speeches, right? And I think Ramona's speech, the champion's speech, has very little humor points. Very few people laughed, but when they did, they laughed hard,
Yes.
and the rest of the time she remained connected. So that humor point, as much as people think, must it really be funny? It is. It has to, because that is one way for you to make sure that you have built that bridge with people. And if you read a few articles, I can't remember offhand right now, but laughter is the easiest way to build that connection with a stranger.
Right.
Even though, and I say this to everyone, even in Singapore, even though you are within a group of friends, the moment you take yourself out and, stand up and speak in front of your friends, just separating yourself from the whole group will make yourself look like a stranger. So even among friends, you need to build that bridge on a daily basis, that regular conversations, you have to build that. So yeah, that's how I see a successful speech to be. It has to be connecting with people through humor points, because that is the effective way to build a bridge fast within 5 to 7 minutes. Yeah.
I like that you say that, Riri, because
Mm.
there are other world championship speeches that are also not based heavily on humor. Ramona, as you mentioned, had a very serious element to her. What she did well is that audience, interaction, especially when she talked about being single, and then she started laughing with the audience. She goes, "Call me." She's like, "I hear this is an international audience." Like it was so off the cuff and so cool. People loved it. But I can't remember the name of the gentleman, and you all can help me. He is the one that started with a cigarette. He was like,
Katani.
yes. He didn't start off with humor, and in fact, a lot of his speech, he was kind of very serious. But the key thing is audience reaction, as you say, to build the bridge at the beginning. If you and silence, guys, to Vivek's point, that's a mental. We talk about mental battles. You need to consider what happens with silence, because silence can very often throw you off your game.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, if you go back to that part about having something bigger than yourself and you want to spread that message, you want to know that your message is being heard. And if you have a message that big and you say it out to people, and all you get is nothing, no response, no feedback, no aha, no looks like that, you start to wonder if your message is really sent effectively. Yeah. And talking about Katani, I consider myself lucky. It's really a coincidence because I don't keep track of what happens in district. As I mentioned, I was very low profile. I never expected to go very high. What happened in my district conference was Manoj, the champion from my country, he flew Katani in for the district conference in Singapore. And so we had a meet and greet session. Like, hey, hi, Katani. And of course, I saw Katani on YouTube and his video about the power of words. So when I saw him and I told him that I'm competing, the first thing he said was, "You want to practice your speech in front of me?" And I'm like,
wow.
Oh, okay.
No
I was
pressure.
nervous. No pressure, but nervous. So nervous because I knew what happened just a few nights ago, right? I presented my speech to a crowd that's not impressed at all. And the speech that I had in my mind, the changes that I made was so different. And I've never tried it. I didn't test it on anyone. And suddenly this world champion say, "You want to test it on me?" Sure not. So, and I was yes, who's that?
Ingrid.
Yes.
Did you know that his speech was actually his number 3 speech that he did for the world champion?
Oh, it's a repeated speech? No, I do not know.
Number 3.
No.
Audience. Was his number 3 speech from the Competent Communications Manual, and he did it.
Yeah. My winning speech was my Project 10 speech.
Yeah.
The semi-final speech. So technically, I spent about 17 months just for that semi-final speech to get to where I got. Yeah, just 17 months. If you were to compare with Ramona's winning speech, if you calculate, she spent about 40 months on her winning speech. The first time she presented her speech, she was not placed. And she didn't even go anywhere near district with her first version of that speech. And I think she shared it in her interview a few times. Yeah. So that's the development of your speech is also very important. I'm jumping a bit here. And I think what's his name? Darren LaCroix said it perfectly. A great speech is not written, it is rewritten. So one thing I learned from this whole experience is the importance of keeping all your project speeches file them. And if you don't do it well the first time round, do not worry. Just improve on it. Whether or not you're competing or not, don't worry. Just improve on it, present it for another project. Because the more times you say it, the better you get. And the more times you say your speech and you practice your speech, the shorter it gets. And when something it becomes shorter, it becomes more impactful. You lose out many jargons, and it also helps with the processing of the message in the audience. Because if you were to imagine some long-winded person sharing a very elaborated story, trying to make it impactful to you, you will lose your attention in that short period of time. So say your message many times in front of an audience and refine it. You will find yourself improving on your message, your speech, every time you practice it.
And does that answer Nadia's question then? Because she's saying, what is your memory technique? So it's this whole idea of constantly practicing practicing that speech. I think we take that for granted, don't we? You literally, guys, the speech has to come to this point where you love it. It's so much a part of you and so much part of your spirit and soul that you could be cleaning your teeth and it's in your head. Because you love that material and you know that you're giving a bigger message. It goes back to this whole idea of what you're giving that's bigger than yourself. So I don't know about you, Vivek, but I would be in the bathroom. I would get up from bed. It's just these random times the speech would come to me. And to your point, you give it time to grow, guys. You give your speeches time to grow and develop. So the fact that your speech was a number 10, that the world champion that we were just hearing, the power of words, was a number 3, all of those can work. And yes, you're allowed to present your speech after you have competed, but there's a caveat. Your semifinal, whatever was done did at semifinals could not be done at district level.
Yeah.
Couldn't be done at the World Championship. So in the case, I know we're going to talk in future sessions about the changes to competition now for district and what is going to happen with us, because ours is going to go to video recording. But I can tell you, and we could tell you, we had to go to Chicago with 2 speeches, and they had to be 2 completely different speeches, one for semifinals and one for your finals. So bear that in mind.
And it's not only 2 speeches. I mean, when I was competing, everyone in Singapore told me to focus on my semi-final speech right until the district level. Then they say, okay, now come out with a second speech. I would like to correct that, and I think it would be really important for all of us to correct it as well, because if you want to have that kind of impact for all your speeches, you need that amount of practice as well for both speeches. So your final speech cannot just start to happen once you enter district. It'll be best if you were to join the contest from the start. You practice your second speech regardless from the start as well. Like I say this because if you were to imagine, what's her name? Sherry Sue. Sherry Sue's final speech, she practiced 200 times. Her semi-final speech, she practiced 300 times.
Wow.
So the impact of that amount of practice is will really determine the quality of your message, your speech at that point of time. So many people, every champion that I met while I was on my way, they said, don't focus on your final speech yet. Just do your semifinals. Just do your semifinals. So one thing I'd like to correct is to focus on both from the beginning, because once you reach that level, the district level, one thing that people maybe do not expect is the intensity of the competition setting, then that you will struggle to change from one speech to another even when you want to practice. you struggle in your mind to give full attention to your other speech if you just want to start on it. So you don't want to struggle with that then, because it will really affect your esteem. It will really affect your confidence when you go up on stage, or even if you're not. Because while I was preparing for my final speech, even in Chicago, in Singapore, especially in Chicago, when they ask, do you have a second speech? Do you have a second speech? Then I'm like, yes, I do. But they ask, is it anything like the semi-final speech? Then I'm like, I don't know. And I know that for myself, because I know how much practice I put into the semi-final speech, and I know how much practice I put in the final speech. And it showed big time on the world stage. So those speech experts would be able to see this is not a very well practiced speech. And it's not that I did not put in time, but it's because I was focusing so much on the semi-final speech. It was so hard for me in that all pressure while preparing for the contest, for me to shift my attention properly to give that much devotion to my second speech at that time, at that point of time. So that was one thing that really caught me off guard while preparing for my contest then. So I did have two speeches. It's just that when you are only just starting to present or practice on the second one, right after, maybe like later on, you will find your second speech jeopardized in terms of quality. And I think Sherry Sue shared that very effectively, because she practiced both speeches as though both speeches are the winning speech. And she started it long before the contest. So both speeches are like, you know, ingrained in her, and everything became muscle work for her. So you just can present like that and present. Doesn't matter the stage, doesn't matter what level, it's both of them.
Wow.
So yeah.
So we have I can't believe the time is running so quickly.
So fast.
So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to just wrap up your segment, and then I'm really happy our district director has been listening intently for District 81. Anita has been listening in.
Hi,
and so I'm going to get her to say some closing words as we wrap up. But any last thoughts for folks as we wrap up?
Regardless of your intention to compete, whether you want to improve yourself as a speaker, or you want to establish yourself as a public speaker for the world, just I say this to many people now, have a pinky promise that if you focus on the message of your speech, whatever difficulties, no matter how intense and so much pressure you feel while preparing for the contest, it will be well worth your effort. Because if you focus on just the message and just the intention to uplift the lives of people who listen to your message, you are doing something really great for anyone out there. And that happened for both of my speeches. I did not expect that to happen. When people watch my speech online, some of them are going through struggles real time, like they had a fight with someone and they did not reconcile with each other, and they are locked up in a room listening to, they happen to listen to my speech, and just being impacted from the words that I say in that 5 to 7 minutes, that person left his desk, went out the room, and made amends with the person out there that they're fighting with. And that's not just one instance.
Right.
And that's not even in Singapore. I don't know which part of the world that person was from. So that is the magnitude of this contest, that stage that you get. So it's very worth your effort. Focus on the message and everything will go your way.
That is a fantastic way for you to end our superhero segment. I'm so glad that you have reinforced that, the idea that for all superheroes, she was an accidental superhero, did not intend to compete, was pushed in, voluntold what she had to do. but what a journey even in Toastmasters. I'm glad that you shared that you were an advocate. That was your purpose, the message that you wanted to give. Reminding us of what we need to do for competitors before and after they compete. Hugs are great. Hugs are great. And of course, to pay attention to our first 10 seconds and to use the resources available to us, even in clubs, our club resources. So, think about that, guys, as you practice. And I saw a comment from Nadia who says she normally uses a spoken word technique. No, we haven't seen that style on the international stage. And maybe it might be helpful if you can video a speech and send it to us, so we can take a look at that, because that tends to, and I don't know much about it, I have to research more, but it tends to veer towards almost an element of poetry or poetry in the way it is sent out. So to your point, we haven't seen that on stage, but that's not to say it will never ever happen. We never say never in this life. So send us a snippet of your videos so we can see. Our Fabiola, our program quality director, is reminding everybody we need the survey link. Of the survey link, we need those surveys filled out. And I need you all to spread the word. February 19th, the next session, 6:30 if you're in Cayman, Haiti, Jamaica, 7:30 if you're in the Eastern Caribbean, Guyana, Trinidad, Barbados, Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, UK, you are midnight again. Feel free to join us if you'd like for that session. It'll be next day for you.
We will be back. Tonight was awesome, so we most certainly will be back.
Nice. That's what I spread the word. Spread the word.
Yes,
Thank you.
But before we all say goodbye, I'd love to say a warm welcome and thank you to our district director, Anita, who is standing by just to say a few words to us. She was driving and trying to connect and it didn't work out, so she rushed home. She listened in and we thought, okay, it would be best if she would close it up with her thank you, because as we said at the beginning, this has been something that was discussed in Chicago at the end of the semifinal competition. So our area director, our district director, everybody, Anita, are you there?
Thank you, Anik. Good evening, Week. It's such an honor to have you take time from your life to share your experience with us. I was privileged to listen to both of your speeches. And if I could say one thing that I admired most about what you said tonight, is how honest you were with yourself. And I think that is so critical if we are to improve as professionals and as human beings. We really need to be honest with ourselves with where we fell down, because that's the only where we can grow. And the truth of the matter is, I've sat in the audience for many competitions, and I can tell instinctively the people who will create an impact, those who will win. Why? The people who are themselves are the ones who create the most impact. When you have coaches and so many people in your ear telling you what you should do, and your originality gets lost in that, instinctively you will set yourself up for failure, because it's like you have to remember this role that you have to play. And I think in both your speeches you remained the same person. It's just the way it was with Anik. I've known Anik for years, and Anik is the same person as she was 5 years ago when I met her. So it's very important to maintain your individuality, because you are unique. The message, as you rightfully said, should always seek to inspire people, because people who try to motivate others, which is a very different thing, come off as being very pushy, persuasive, and they're trying to force something down your throat because they believe in it. Inspiration is very different. Inspiration comes from a real place. It's an experience you had. It's something that you dug yourself out of, you pulled yourself out of, and that's relatable because everybody has a struggle. And I always say, if we as human beings, instead of looking at each other and judging, thinking that the other is better off than us, and we start thinking, I wonder what struggle he has, or I wonder what struggle she has, we would see each other very differently. And that was the difference in the people who won and the people who didn't do as well. You mentioned another point that I really want us to take away. Winner or loser, it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, you will touch at least one person with your message. Somebody would have been facing something and they would have needed that one word of inspiration. And so Mohammed Katani's speech about words and using your words in an impactful way is perhaps the key takeaway for any competitor. Is it, what impact do you want to have in the lives of your audience? It's not so much about what you want to say, but what impact you want to have. And us being in a leadership organization, you know that leadership is about impact and influence. And the minute you take that stage, you are taking a leading role. So you got to have that impact and you got to have that influence. So I think that there was great insight shared here tonight. I'm so happy that so many members made it out. I hope at the next session we can have more people. But I believe that you have given us a lot of helpful information, a lot of food for thought. Anik, I can't sing praises to you enough. I think this was a gem of an initiative. And I think that it just goes to show that we should always share and pay it forward when we benefit from certain things. And both of you, I commend both of you for taking your time to help in the development and the strengthening of other members. I think that is what our organization is all about. It's a family. And we look out for each other. We can learn from each other. And at the end of the day, we will all grow and win together. So thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you competing again next year.
Thank you so much, Anita. So those were words from our district director. We're happy to have you on it. I want to say hi to Pierre from Haiti, our PR manager, who has been on the call. Our division director, I think she's dropped off, was on as well, Janet. And I was happy to have them. And of course, Fabiola, who's doing it. To all of you who have been on this session, thank you so much. Miss Thelma, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Okay.
Good, good. I am so happy that for the ladies from the UK, it was well worth it. Because I know that it's way past your bedtime. And some of the names and faces here I'm scrolling through, I don't know you all personally. So thank you all for joining. Miss Elka, I remember, I think we've met before. So happy to have you all on board. Giandra, I hope now that you're ready for competition in 2020. All I'm saying is the championship is in Paris, guys. That's where it's gonna be. Just saying. Fill out the poll, and all being well, we see you on February 19th. Let us know if you'd like a copy of this recording, because this was recorded. We enjoy your day, because the rest of us are going to go to bed.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Plenty hugs.
Plenty hugs.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 I'm on mute. Fabiola, I think it's a wrap for us. Thank you so much. Night, Michelle. Night, Violet. Thank you so much for joining. Miss Thelma, thank you so much for joining. I'm really happy all you guys were able to be a part of it. All right.
I know.
Bye.
Night, night. So, Madam Program Quality Director, I'll link up with you later so we can talk about the results.
Okie dokie. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.